Let's go live to Sydney now, where Shadow Cabinet Minister Bill Shorten joins us now. From what you've seen so far, Mr Shorten, do you think this is the right response to the coronavirus in terms of the stimulus package?
In terms of the stimulus, we'll have a look at the detail. Labor will be constructive. Anthony Albanese said that. We think that the economy does need rescuing. I mean, it wasn't in great shape before the virus. But measures which help keep people in work, we will certainly be very constructive about. And I mean, the one thing I want to look at personally when I look at the stimulus package today is, are they doing enough to look after 3 million casual and part-time employees? These people are at the sort of bottom of the employment hierarchy, and a lot of them, if they are told to stay at home for 2 weeks, don't have a lot of money, and so I want to see if they're looked after. But we're up for constructive support for the economy, for business, for small businesses, but also for 3 million casual and part-time workers who I'm worried will get forgotten about.
So far, from the detail that we've seen, you can't see Labor standing in the way when this gets to Parliament.
Well, we need to see the detail, but Labor said they're going to be up for constructive measures. Anthony Albanese and Chris Bowen have been talking with the Chief Medical Officer. They've been talking with the experts. We want to be constructive. This is not a time for party politics. It's a time to be constructive. Of course, what we want to make sure is that the package is fair. We want to make sure that the package is timely. I mean, the bushfires, there's some parts of bushfire-affected Australia have only seen 4 or 5 loans go out already. So we just want to make sure that it's not hype and that there is, you know, it's really going to happen. But Labor's up for being constructive, absolutely.
OK, you mentioned those 3.3 million casual workers. What kind of support do you think they need?
Well, I noticed that some in the union movement are saying there should be some special leave provided for them where they get some money and then the employers could seek reimbursement from the government. I don't expect that small business should have to pay for the special leave. But what I do think is that where you've got a casual worker, asking them to self-isolate for 14 days or 7 days or 10 days when they have no income at all puts them in a terrible bind. They either self-isolate and starve, or they go to work sick.
But who
Neither
should pay for that?
Option.
Who should pay for that? I mean, there's a lot in this package for business. Shouldn't that then be channeled through? Isn't it up to business, not taxpayers?
Well, what I think is that it's a cooperative effort, and I think that government at the end of the day should be helping business, particularly small business, with this cost. So yeah, I ultimately think that it's a team effort. One thing's for sure though, if you're on $20 an hour and you've got, you know, only get 25 hours a week, and then you're told that you've got to stay home for 2 weeks, you all of a sudden you're in the hole for $1,000 and you've got to pay your rent.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure the casuals and the part-timers don't get forgotten. I mean, we have a flexible labour market. The problem is that in this unprecedented pandemic, I just want to make sure that millions of ordinary Australians don't get forgotten.
OK, let's go.
I'm sure we can work it through.
I'm sure we can. Let's go through some of the detail now. Let's start with the one-off payments that have been foreshadowed to New Start recipients and pensioners. Is that a good idea?
It sounds positive. Sure. Like,
do you have a figure in mind about what it should be?
No, I don't. I'll wait to see what the government suggests. But people on New Start, I know that there's sometimes a bit of paw bashing goes on and elements of the political debate from the right wing. But New Start's $260 a week, roughly. You know, we need the people who get a stimulus package from the government. They're not going to start buying gold bullion or Cayman Island shares. If they get the money, they'll be spending it, and that's exactly what our small businesses need in the Australian economy, some money being spent. The biggest problem economically with the pandemic is it kills confidence. So if you've got people, pensioners, people on New Start, and they've got, some scarce dollars, they'll spend it, and that'll generate economic activity right through the value chain in Australian business.
Wage subsidy, support for apprentices, all positive?
Yeah, that's good. Apprentices are crucial. I mean, yeah, we can debate what the government's done on apprentices another day and their cuts, but I'm not going to be a cloud of misery. I think if they're looking after apprentices, well, Labor's the party of apprenticeship, so I think that's headed in the right direction.
This seems a lot more targeted than what Labor did during the global financial crisis 11 years ago. I know they're two very different crises, absolutely, but are there lessons about how Labor responded to the GFC that the government is heeding here?
LJ, I think that's just a bit of government spin. You know, you haven't heard me on the show saying, you know, rubbing the government's face in it, that they promised to be back in black and, you know...
No, but there are lessons you can learn from history. So is there something that you went through 10 years ago that the government, you would say the government should be quite attuned to now?
Listen, the lesson, you know, this is about the coronavirus and the public health emergency, but the lesson which I think has been learned is that for years the current mob in power rubbished Wayne Swan and Kevin Rudd for having the stimulus package. Now it seems that whilst they're trying to say it's different, the reality is that, you know, if it walks and quacks like a duck, it probably is, and this is a stimulus package, and sure, circumstances are different, but it seems to me they're resorting to the same economic textbook that Wayne and Kevin used.
Keynesians. And, you know, we're all Keynesians now, are we?
Well, some people probably never stop being Keynesians, but, you know, the point about it is that one thing that the economist Keynes said, and I don't think I've got the quote exactly right, but it's effectively, when the facts change, so does his opinion. And I think that Messrs Frydenberg and Morrison, having rubbish Labor, now confronted with a set of circumstances, they've gone, oops. Well, we won't call ourselves Keynesians, but, you know, hey, if it walks and quacks.
Let me quickly finally ask you about the $2.4 billion that was set aside yesterday as the medical response to all of this. This has been spent not just in this financial year, but next. What does that tell you about what the government is thinking around how long coronavirus has to run?
I think this is the big issue. It's actually bigger than the economic stimulus package, despite the amounts of money. Coronavirus is a public health emergency. You know, I've just been looking at around the world what other countries are doing. India's not taking foreign travellers till April the 15th. In states and Israel's requiring people to isolate for 14 days.
Should the GP go ahead in Melbourne?
Well, I think it's already starting today, but I will make this point, and it won't be a popular point. You know, I think the Chief Medical Officer and the medical officers, they're doing everything right. Stimulus, let's see the detail. But at the end of the day, it is about public health emergency. So what that means is, you know, in Kentucky, they're not even having church services on Sunday. In Washington State, events larger than 250 they're not having. We just heard in your news bulletin, the Italians are basically saying that unless you're a grocery or a chemist shop, you're going to go into lockdown if you can't create a metre distance between customers. The only way to make sure this pandemic is not worse than it otherwise could be is to have more drastic social distancing measures. Singapore and Japan and parts of China, they are putting in more draconian reactions. As a result, it would appear that some of their pandemic numbers are not going to be as bad as other countries who are just doing too little too late. This is going to be a major policy question, not in weeks and months, but in days. Do we keep having big events? Will we teach school from home? We've got to have more social distancing, and that is the only way to stop this pandemic being worse than it might otherwise be.
Bill Shorten, appreciate your time.
Thank you.